The job line stretched across the dusty spaceport on Earth 9. Aliens from different planets stood quietly, holding signs, resumes, or just hope. Among them was a thin alien woman, her gray skin covered in a worn-out robe. Her name was Nira. She was from a small farming planet called Xantar 4, and she had nothing left but her little boy and a voice that still whispered, "Don't give up." Her son Linu held her hand tightly. He looked up at her with wide blue eyes. Hungry but silent, Nira smiled weakly at him, though her legs were tired, her back aching, and her heart even more so. Every few minutes, an employer would step forward and call out names. Nira's name was never called. Again and again, she stepped forward and said, "Please, I just need a job." But each time, she got the same cold answer. "Xantarans don't work well in human systems. You're not strong enough. We don't need more aliens." One recruiter didn't even look at her and just said, "Next." Nira stepped back, holding her child close. She felt invisible to most people here. She was just another number, another problem. But inside, she was a mother, a widow, and a fighter. She had lost her husband in the last war. He was a pilot who never came home since then. Nira had traveled from system to system, searching for peace, searching for a chance. But no one wanted to hire a poor alien widow, especially not one with a child. The sun of Earth 9 burned orange above the clouds. The wind was dry, carrying sand that stung her face. Linu coughed softly, and Nira wrapped her scarf around his mouth. She was about to give up and walk away when she heard a voice behind her. A human voice. "Maybe I can help," the man said. Nira turned around, blinking against the light. The man standing there looked like he had seen many battles. He wore a brown leather coat, boots covered in dust, and his eyes were tired but kind. "My name's Jackson Hale," he said. "I run a small cargo crew, nothing fancy." He looked at Linu, then back at Nira. "You looking for work?" he asked. Nira nodded slowly, unsure if this was real. "Yes," she said softly. "I can clean, cook, organize, fix things too." Jackson tilted his head. "You ever worked on a freight ship before?" "No," she replied, "but I can learn quickly." He rubbed his chin and looked her up and down. "You don't have weapons," he said. "You don't seem dangerous. Yet no one's hiring you." She swallowed. "I'm from Xantar 4. Jackson raised an eyebrow. "Xantar 4. "Huh," he muttered. "My daughter, she—" He stopped mid-sentence, then shook his head. "Never mind, come with me." Nira hesitated. "Why are you helping me?" Jackson gave a half-smile. "Because I know what it feels like to be the only one left standing." He turned and walked toward a small, rusty ship parked at Dock 47. Nira picked up her small bag and followed, holding Linu close. As they walked, others in the line whispered. Some stared, some scoffed, but Nira didn't care. For the first time in a long time, someone had spoken to her with respect. Not as a burden, but as a person. They reached the ship. It was old, but looked strong, with scratches and patches on the side. The name Starwind Echo was painted across the hull. Inside, the ship smelled of oil, metal, and spices. 2 humans and 1 tall robot stood inside, watching her closely. Jackson waved them off. "She's with me," he said. The others didn't argue, but their eyes said they didn't trust her. Jackson led her to a small cabin. "It's not much," he said, "but it's safe." Nira sat on the bed, holding Linu. Her hands trembled. Not from fear, but from relief. As Jackson turned to leave, he paused. "One thing, Nira," he said. "If you lie to me, if you betray my crew, I won't hesitate to throw you out the airlock." Nira met his eyes. "I will not lie," she said. "All I want is a future for my child." Jackson nodded and walked away. That night, as the ship prepared to take off, Nira sat by the window and looked at the stars. Maybe, just maybe, her life was about to change. But deep in her heart, she felt something strange. Not fear, not joy, but a quiet warning. Something was coming, and it wasn't just a job. Asterisk, the cargo ship's Starwind Echo moved slowly through the black silence of space, its old engines humming like a tired animal. Inside, Nira stood quietly in the hallway, unsure where to go or what to do. Her son, Linu, sat on a bench nearby, swinging his feet and staring at the blinking lights on the wall. The ship wasn't large, but it felt like a maze to Nira. There were long corridors, dusty storage rooms, and tight metal stairs. Every part of it smelled like oil, heat, and rust. It wasn't home, but it wasn't the streets of Earth 9 either. A heavy door opened with a hiss, and Jackson Hawley stepped out. He handed Nira a folded jumpsuit and a small wrist chip. "This is your uniform and your access pass," he said. "You'll start by helping in the cargo bay, then the kitchen." Nira nodded and thanked him. Jackson watched her for a moment longer, like he was searching for something in her eyes. Then he turned away and walked toward the control room. Other crew members didn't speak much. There was Reed, a muscular man with sharp eyes who fixed engines. He barely looked at Nira, just muttered, "Don't touch my tools." Then there was Mila, the ship's pilot, who seemed more curious. Then Cruel, "First time on a ship?" she asked Nira while sipping hot coffee. Nira nodded. "Yes," Mila smiled. "Well, you'll either love it or vomit every day." The third number was Unit 9, a humanoid robot that didn't talk much but scanned everything with glowing green eyes. It beeped quietly as Nira walked by, then returned to stacking crates. Nira worked hard all day. She sorted boxes, cleaned floors, and learned how to seal crates for atmospheric travel. Her hands got cut and bruised, but she didn't stop. At night, she sat with Linu in their tiny cabin, giving him half her food. He never complained, just hugged her tightly and fell asleep with his head on her lap. Jackson noticed. He didn't say anything, but he noticed one night, while checking his storage report, Mila spoke quietly to Jackson. "Why her?" she asked. "She's not trained, she's weak, and she has a kid." Jackson didn't answer right away. He stared out the small window where stars passed by like snowflakes in the dark. "She reminds me of someone," he said finally. "Who?" Mila asked, but Jackson didn't reply. The truth was, Jackson Hawley had once had a family. Years ago, during the Zentaran conflict, his daughter had joined the Peace Guard to help injured civilians. She was sent to a small planet during the last days of the war. The planet was Xantar 4. Her ship never came back. He never blamed the Xantarans. Not really. War destroyed everyone, on every side. But when he saw Nira alone, struggling, holding her son like a shield, it pulled at something inside him that had been locked away. One evening, while Nira was cleaning the kitchen area, Reed walked in. He looked angry. "What's this doing here?" he barked, holding up a tool from the engine room. Nira stepped back, confused. I was cleaning near the floor vents," she said. "It was already there." Reed narrowed his eyes. "Don't lie to me," he growled. "People like you always steal." Nira's hand shook. "I did not steal anything," she whispered. Reed stepped closer, but before he could say anything more, Jackson entered. His voice was calm but firm. "Back off, Reed." Reed grumbled and stormed out. Nira stood still, tears starting to form in her eyes. "Why does everyone hate me?" she asked softly. "I'm just trying to live." Jackson sighed. "They've seen too many bad days," he said. "They don't trust easily. Do you trust me?" she asked. Jackson paused. "Not yet," he said honestly. "But I'm watching." Later that week, something strange happened. The ship's main system glitched in the middle of the night. Doors opened and closed without command, and a soft beeping echoed through the halls. Jackson rushed to the control room. Mila checked the logs. "No reason for this," she said. "It's like someone triggered a remote signal." Jackson checked the codes, but they didn't match anything known. "This isn't a virus," he said. "It's a tracker, down in the lower bay." Nira was sweeping the floor when she saw a blinking light under one of the old crates. Curious, she knelt down and pulled out a small round device. It beeped once, then stopped. She stared at it, confused and scared. Then footsteps came from behind. It was Reed. his eyes locked onto the device in her hands. "What the hell is that?" He snapped. "I don't know," Nira said quickly. "I just found it here." Reed grabbed it and stormed off, yelling for Jackson. Now the crew was on edge. Some believed Nira planted the device. Others weren't so sure. Jackson called her into the control room. "Tell me the truth," he said, his eyes hard. "Did you bring this on board?" Nira looked him straight in the eyes. "No," she said. "I swear on my son's life." Jackson didn't answer, not yet. But deep down, he felt something was wrong. Not with her, but with the ship. Or maybe someone else on board, as the ship drifted silently through the stars. Trust was cracking, questions were rising, and the shadows inside Starwind Echo were growing longer. And Nira, she had only just begun to understand what she had stepped into. The silence inside the ship was no longer peaceful. It was heavy, sharp, like a blade pressed gently against the skin. No one said it aloud, but everyone on the Starwind Echo had changed since the tracker was found. Nira felt it in every look, every pause, every step. Mila stopped talking during meals. Unit 9 scanned her twice a day without reason. Reed refused to enter any room she was in. Only Jackson remained calm, though even his calmness felt tighter now, like a rope slowly pulled. He still gave her tasks, still let her stay, but the warmth in his voice had cooled. Nira didn't sleep much. She would lie next to her son, eyes open, thinking of the blinking light under that crate. It wasn't hers, she knew that, but someone had put it there. And now she was the easiest one to blame. A week passed. The ship made stops at 2 moons and a cargo station, but something strange kept happening. One crate was missing on one stop. Then a storage bay was unlocked during a flight. Jackson double-checked everything himself. "We're being watched," he finally said, not to anyone, but to himself. He stared at the star map. On the screen, red dots blinking where they shouldn't. He didn't say who he suspected, but the crew didn't need words. Their eyes already pointed to one person. That night, Nira cleaned the old mess hall. It was quiet, only the hum of the ship filled the space. She liked this part, being alone, her hands busy, her thoughts silent. But something wasn't right. She heard a soft sound, like static from a broken radio, then a whisper, but no words. She turned quickly. Nothing was there, just the corner of the hall where an old vent hung open slightly. She stepped toward it, cautious. Her hand reached out and pulled the vent open wider. Inside, something glinted, a small black box different from the tracker, thicker, with blue lights blinking slow and soft. It looked like it had been placed there recently. She reached for it, but before she could touch it, a voice cut through the silence. "What are you doing?" It was Reed, standing behind her, arms crossed, face hard. Nira pulled her hand back. "There's something in the vent," she said. "It's not mine." Reed didn't move. "You always have an answer," he said. "Always an excuse." Nira took a deep breath. "I'm telling the truth." "You said that last time," he snapped. "You think we're all fools?" Before she could defend herself, Mila entered the room, followed by Jackson. He looked from Nira to Reed, then to the open vent. "What's going on?" he asked, his voice sharp. Reed didn't speak, he just pointed. Jackson stepped forward and pulled the black box from the vent. He turned it over in his hand, studying it. Then his expression changed, not to anger, but confusion. "This tech, it's not Zentaran," he said. "It's human military grade." The room went still. Even the ship's hum seemed quieter. Reed looked at the device again, then at Nira, his face unsure now. Why would she have access to something like that? Mila said, her voice calm but tense. "She wouldn't," Jackson said. "Which means someone else put it there." A long pause followed. No one said the name, but everyone thought it. Reed's face darkened, but not with anger, more like guilt or fear. Jackson pocketed the device. "I want full scans of the ship," he ordered. "And I want everyone's quarters checked, including mine." No one protested. Later, Nira sat alone in the back cargo hold, staring at the stars through a small round window. Linu was asleep again. Curled up in a blanket beside her, Jackson entered without knocking. He leaned against the wall, arms folded. "You okay?" he asked. Nira nodded slowly. "I didn't do anything wrong," she whispered. "I know," he said, "but the others don't. Not yet. Do you trust me now?" she asked, her voice small, tired. Jackson took a long breath. "I trust that you're not stupid," he said. "If you were a spy, you'd have vanished by now." Nira managed a tiny smile. The first in days, he moved to leave, then stopped at the door. "That box in the vent. Only someone with access to the command log could have planted it." "Who has that access?" she asked. "Only 4 people on this ship," he said, "and you're not one of them." The door closed behind him. For the first time, suspicion turned away from her, but where it landed now was even more dangerous. Someone on board was lying, someone who smiled during meals, gave commands, ran engines, and slept just down the hall. And Nira, the widow from Xander 4, was right in the middle of it. Asterisk, the silence after the discovery of the black box didn't bring peace. It brought suspicion. Every smile felt fake, every step echoed louder. Even the lights on the ceiling flickered like they were nervous. No one said it, but the truth was spreading across the ship like a silent scream. There was a traitor on board. Nira stopped speaking unless necessary. She walked with her head down, doing her work, feeding her child, and sleeping with one eye open. Trust had always been hard for her to find. Now it felt impossible. Jackson moved differently too. He was still the captain, but something in his eyes had changed. He didn't ask questions anymore. He watched. He let conversations flow and listened without joining. He was looking for something or someone. Then the attack came, not with warning, but with fire. A blast shook the ship so hard it tossed Nira across the kitchen wall. Screams echoed through the corridors, followed by the shrill sound of alarms. Linu cried from the sleeping quarters. Nira ran to him without thinking. Jackson's voice boomed through the intercom. Pirates' 3 ships brace for evasive moves. The next jolt threw crates loose from their locks. Metal clanged and crashed. The stars outside blinked fast as the ship swerved. Mila's voice cut through the comms. "Shields at 40%. Return fire," Jackson shouted. "We can't," Reed yelled. "Weapons are offline. Someone tampered with the main link." Jackson's heart dropped. It wasn't just an attack. It was an ambush. They had been set up. He rushed to the control deck, fists clenched. "Where's the breach?" "Lower cargo hold," Mila said. "They're trying to board." The floor shook again, then silence. The kind that only happens when systems shut down completely. Lights flickered, then died. Emergency power kicked in, bathing the ship in blood-red glow. Nira held Linu tightly in the dark, her body shielding his. Footsteps echoed outside the hallway, not from her crew. These were heavier, faster. Boots of men who didn't belong here. She reached for the only thing nearby, an old metal rod. Door hissed open. A masked figure stepped inside. A tall shadow against red lights. He raised a weapon, but before he could fire, a sharp sound rang out. The figure jerked and fell, smoke rising from his chest. Behind him stood Jackson, gun in hand, eyes like fire. "Are you all right?" he asked. Nira nodded, shaking. "Take Linu and lock yourselves in the med bay," he said. "Don't come out unless I open the door myself." She obeyed, running down the corridor as the ship rocked again. Jackson reloaded his weapon and moved through the halls like a man walking through ghosts. He shot 2 more invaders and slammed a control switch that activated internal defenses. Electric bolts shot down corridor walls, pushing the intruders back. The pirates retreated quickly, too quickly. It wasn't a full raid. It was a test, or a message when the power returned and the crew regrouped. The truth became clear. The pirates had attacked with exact knowledge of the ship's cargo route. They had known where to hit and when. Jackson stood in the center of the deck, breathing hard. "We've been betrayed from the inside," he said. "No one else could have leaked the path." Eyes turned again, but not toward Nira this time. They shifted between Reed, Mila, and Unit 9. One of them had given the coordinates. Nira stood in the corner, watching them, her son sleeping in her arms, unaware of how close death had come. She wasn't a spy, but now she understood something deeper. She was part of this, like it or not, and if she wanted to protect her son, she'd have to act like more than a mother. That night, she didn't sleep. Instead, she crept into the main system room. The door was unlocked, which was strange inside. She saw wires cut, twisted, and reconnected in strange loops. Whoever had done it knew exactly what they were doing, but they had left a mistake. A fingerprint on the side panel. It wasn't hers. It wasn't Jackson's. It belonged to someone else entirely. She pressed the alarm. Jackson came running, gun in hand. "What did you find?" he asked. Nira stepped aside and pointed. He scanned the print, then checked the crew records. When the match came, Jackson stared at the screen in disbelief. Then his expression darkened into something colder than space itself. He didn't speak, just turned and walked toward the crew quarters. Nira followed him, her heart racing. Behind one of those doors lived the person who had nearly killed them all. Someone who laughed with them, worked beside them, maybe even smiled at her child. And now the mask was about to fall, and the truth waiting beneath it would shake all of them more than any pirate attack ever could. Jackson stood outside the crew quarters, his hand hovering over the door panel. The hallway was silent, but it wasn't peaceful. It was the kind of silence that comes right before something breaks. Nira stood behind him, holding Linu close, her breath shallow. Inside that room was the person who had betrayed them. The fingerprint had spoken, cold and clear. The traitor was not an outsider, not a pirate. It was someone who had shared meals, fought side by side, slept just a few feet away. Jackson pressed the panel. The door slid open with a hiss. Reed was sitting on his bunk, polishing a tool. He didn't look surprised, didn't even flinch. "Took you long enough," he said. Without looking up, Jackson stepped inside slowly, his gun still holstered but ready. "You sold us out," he said. Reed shrugged. "They paid well, better than this job ever did. You could have gotten us all killed." Jackson said, voice shaking with quiet rage, "I warned you not to hire her," Reed replied, nodding at Nira in the hall. "You brought her in and started caring more about some alien than your own crew." "She saved my life," Jackson growled. "She's not the problem." Reed stood up, tall, broad, and unafraid. "She's a distraction," he snapped. "You've been soft since she came aboard. She made you weak." Jackson stepped forward, face inches away from him. "I've been many things," he said, "but never weak." For a moment, time stood still. Then Reed's hand moved fast, too fast, reaching for the knife hidden behind the locker door. But Jackson was faster. A sharp sound cracked through the room. Reed dropped the blade, blood trailing from his shoulder. He stumbled back, clutching the wound. Jackson pulled out cuffs and locked his wrists without another word. "You'll explain everything when we reach Port Vega," he said. "If you're lucky, they won't throw you out an airlock." Reed spat on the floor, but said nothing more. Later that night, the crew gathered in the control deck. Mila piloted, in silence, her face tight with guilt and confusion. Unit 9 monitored Reed's cabin from a distance, its green eyes glowing steadily. Nira sat in a corner, watching the stars blur past. Jackson stood in the center, arms crossed. "No more lies," he said. "We were lucky this time. Next time, we might not survive." No one argued, no one needed to. After everyone left, Nira walked up to Jackson. She held something in her hand, a small black disc. "I found this in Reed's locker while cleaning," she said. Jackson took it, scanning the markings. It wasn't just pirate tech. It was old military encryption-coded messages meant for someone off-grid. He stared at the disc like it was a ghost from his past, then looked up, eyes heavy. "This isn't just a betrayal," he said. "This goes deeper. Someone hired Reed to do more than leak cargo paths. They wanted something or someone on this ship." Nira's heart tightened. "You think they were after me?" She asked. Jackson didn't answer. That night, as the ship floated through cold space, another message came through, not through the usual channels. It was hidden, tucked inside the system, like a whisper meant for only one person. Jackson decrypted it alone, eyes fixed on the screen. The message was simple. Xantar 4 prisoner transfer confirmed. Subject: Kelran. Status: alive. His breath caught. That Nem Kelran was Nira's husband, presumed dead in the war. But here it was, cold and digital. He was alive, and someone had known it all along. Jackson walked slowly to Nira's cabin. She was awake, sitting near her son, watching. Old recordings of Xantar 4 forests. He stepped inside without a word and sat across from her. Then he showed her the message. She stared at the words for a long time. Her hands shook, her mouth opened, but no sound came. Tears fell silently down. Her cheeks, pale. "He's alive," she whispered, almost not believing it. Jackson nodded. "But he's in a black zone," he said. "Deep in outlaw space. Guarded, hidden. I have to go to him," she said immediately. Jackson looked at her. "If we do this, it won't be legal," he warned. "We'll have to go off the grid, maybe break a few laws. We could lose everything." "I already lost everything," she said, eyes locked on his. "I'm not losing him too." Jackson looked at Linu. Then back at her. The boy slept peacefully, unaware his father still breathed in a prison across the stars. Jackson exhaled slowly. "All right," he said. "Then we prepare. We're not just flying cargo anymore. We're going to war." Asterisk. The stars outside didn't shine the same, not in outlaw space. They flickered like broken lights behind a dirty window. Nothing felt natural here, not even gravity. Jackson stood in front of the holographic map, arms folded, jaw tight. He had stared at this path a dozen times, trying to find a safer way in. There wasn't one. Black Zone 888 was a forgotten prison moon, surrounded by dead satellites and buried secrets. 3 defense layers, Mila said from behind him, pointing at red zones glowing on the map. Laser mines, drone patrols, and a signal jammer. "Anyone who enters doesn't leave. And that's where he is," Nira whispered, staring at the name still blinking in the data. "Kelran. Alive." She pressed her hand to her chest, feeling her heartbeat fight against the fear. Jackson looked at her. "You still want to do this?" "Yes," she said. "For my son." Mila and Unit 9 exchanged quiet glances. They didn't argue. They were past doubt now. This was no longer just Nira's fight. This was a rescue mission none of them had signed up for, but all of them were now willing to face. Jackson gave the order. "Set course for the moon." The Starwind Echo moved like a shadow across the edge of a broken system. They killed all lights, ran silent, and cut power to everything except life support, for hours. The crew sat in darkness, only the low hum of the ship surrounding them. Nira stayed close to Linu, holding his hand as he slept. Jackson sat in the pilot's seat, staring ahead into the black. He wasn't thinking about war this time, or betrayal. He was thinking about a promise, one he had never said out loud. He had told himself he wouldn't let anyone else lose family the way he had. The moment they crossed into the black zone, everything changed. A cold system-wide signal hit them like a slap. Unauthorized entry detected. A mechanical voice echoed, then silence again. Suddenly, motion sensors lit up. 2 drones inbound. Mila said, "They're fast." Jackson gritted his teeth. "We can't outfly them. We go dark, hide in the asteroid belt." The ship dropped into a tight space between massive rocks, drifting like debris. The drones flew past, scanning but not stopping. It worked barely. Inside, no one moved. Even breath felt too loud. When the path cleared, they crept forward. The prison moon came into view, gray, jagged, and glowing with electric veins. It didn't look like a building. It looked like a scar in space. "Signals are jamming everything," Unit 9 reported. "No communications inside. We go in." "Blind," Jackson said. "I'll land us on the dark side, near the waste port. That's our only opening." Nira put on the stolen guard uniform they had found weeks ago. It barely fit, but it would work long enough. Jackson looked at her, his voice low. Once we're in, we have 20 minutes before they notice the false ID. After that, we're ghosts, she nodded. No fear in her face, only purpose, only love. They moved quickly through the waste corridor, avoiding cameras, using smoke scramblers to block sensors. The prison interior was colder than space. Metal floors echoed with distant screams. Lights flickered, and guards walked in tight pairs, faces covered, weapons charged. Unit 9 hacked the terminal. Calren located. Block C, Cell 38. Nira and Jackson moved through the shadows, slipping past patrols like wind. Then finally, they reached the cell. The door buzzed as Unit 9 bypassed the lock. Inside, lying on the floor, bruised and unconscious, was Kale. Nira froze, tears building in her eyes. She dropped to her knees and touched his face. Kale, she whispered. It's me. His eyes opened slowly, clouded, weak, but alive. Nira. He breathed, and then passed out again. Jackson lifted him gently. Time's up, he said. We run now. Alarm sounded sharp, endless. The false ID had failed. The escape was a blur of gunfire and smoke. Mila guided the ship to a hover zone outside the waste shaft. Engines hot. Move, 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 she shouted into the comm. They burst out of the shaft just as shots rained down from the towers. Unit 9 was hit in the leg but kept moving. Jackson pushed Nira forward as the door opened. Mila screamed. We have to go now. The ship rose fast. Dodging turret fire, drones chased. But this time Jackson didn't run. He fought back. He aimed turrets, hit the afterburners, and flew like a ghost with fire on its wings. Minutes later, silence returned. The prison moon faded behind them. They had done it. Kale was alive. Nira sat beside him, holding his hand as medbots worked quietly. Jackson leaned back in the pilot's chair, eyes closed. They had risked everything, and for once, they hadn't lost, but far away, in the shadows of a war not yet over. Someone had been watching, someone who had not expected them to succeed, and that someone was now very, very interested in Nira and the human who had helped her. The scars of the rescue hadn't healed yet, not on their bodies, and definitely not in their minds. Kale's breathing was steady now, but shallow. He lay in the ship's medical pod, wires running across his chest, a mask over his face. Nira hadn't left his side for days, not even for sleep. She just sat there, holding his hand, whispering memories from Xander 4 into his ear. Outside the med bay, Jackson watched her through the glass wall, arms folded. There was pride in his eyes, but also a weight, a knowing, silent weight. The escape had come at a price. The Starwind Echo had taken damage they couldn't fully repair. Mila's arm was still bandaged. Unit 9's legs sparked now and then, and the fuel cells were dangerously low. They couldn't outrun what was coming next, because something was coming. Jackson had known it the moment they crossed into the black zone. And now, the warning was real. A transmission came through private, encrypted, voice only. It wasn't a pirate or a government authority. It was colder, smoother, and much more dangerous. We know what you did, the voice said. Return the Xantaran asset, or we'll come for you all. Jackson didn't reply. He just ended the call. He walked to the deck window and stared into the deep black again. It was never just about Kale. Someone had wanted him kept in that prison. For a reason, someone powerful. And now the secret was out. When Kale woke, the first words he said were not about war or pain. He looked at Nira, weak and smiling. You cut your hair, he whispered. She laughed for the first time in what felt like years. You noticed, she replied. Then his eyes turned to Jackson, standing at the door. I know you, he said slowly. Jackson raised an eyebrow. You were stationed on Lunar Base Theta during the ceasefire. Jackson nodded once. I watched the sky burn from that post, Kale added. Seems we've both walked through fire, Jackson replied. In the quiet that followed, decisions had to be made. They couldn't go back to Earth 9. They couldn't go back to anywhere with laws, borders, flags. Too many eyes now knew about them. We build something else, Jackson said one night to Nira. No more running, no more hiding. He offered her something simple, but powerful. Take command of this ship, he said. You've earned it more than anyone here. Nira stared at him, shocked. I'm not a captain, she said. You weren't a soldier, he said, until you had no choice. And just like that, the Starwind Echo changed its path. No longer a cargo hauler, no longer just a ship for misfits and wanderers. Now it became something new, a home, a symbol. Words spread quietly among refugee networks, outlaw colonies, and abandoned planets. They said there was a ship that didn't care about your species, your past, or your scars, only that you needed help, and that you were willing to help others in return. Nira stood at the helm now, her son Linu beside her, older, smiling. Kale walked again, slowly, leaning on a cane, but alive and grateful. Jackson stayed aboard, not as captain but as family together. They flew into the parts of space others had abandoned. They rescued, they rebuilt, and when people asked who they were, they didn't say their names, they just smiled and said, we're the ones who said yes when no one else would. And deep in the galaxy, in quiet corners full of silence and sorrow, that was enough, because sometimes one act of kindness doesn't just save a life, it builds a future, one star at a time.